In this how-to, we're going to take a look at creating your own race course. A race course is just a flight plan, and any flight plan can be a race course, so you can go back and watch our creating bush trips or creating a new flight plan videos in the how-tos playlist. All the concepts are the same, but there's some special strategies that I can show you when gearing a flight plan to a race course as opposed to just trying to get from point A to point B or sightsee or whatever else you're trying to do. Now, we're going to do 3 different race courses because there's kind of 3 different strategies. There's urban courses. I'll show you first, a lot of man-made obstacles and potentially things you can fly under, bridges and so forth. And then we'll do a backcountry race course where it's a lot of up and down through the mountains somewhere. And then at the end, I'll do one for a commercial aircraft. You can do any of these things with commercial aircraft that you can do with all the small aircraft that I normally fly. But maybe what we'll do is we'll pick an A320 out of United's fleet, and maybe we'll do a day in the life, and we'll consider that a race course, and you can time that too. Of course, something like that will end up being an 8 or 10 hour jaunt, but if you want to do that, you can certainly do that. So let's get started. As I've mentioned in multiple videos before, you'll notice we don't have a new button in flight plan. So I'm going to create a new flight plan, and there's several ways to do that. Like later on, I'll show you I'm going to copy from one flight plan to another. But I want to point out that if you're creating a flight plan from scratch, you really should just go into World Map and load an airport, the airport you want ideally. Let's use KSFO because I know the ICAO off the top of my head. Arrival, and you'll notice it's nighttime here. I'm going to leave that for now because I want to point something else out, or it's dawn basically. I've got San Francisco to Seattle, doesn't matter. And then we're going to pick an aircraft. Now I'm making a race course, so let me pick something. Let me pick the Goldfinger because I think the instrumentation's pretty easy to see as my aircraft. You're going to want to pick a runway as opposed to say parking. If you start at parking, you're going to be cold and dark. So unless you just want to start up the Goldfinger, you're going to want to start on a runway so that Flight Simulator starts you. I don't know if it starts you at hold short, or I think it starts you right on the runway, ready to take off, started. So this is kind of the point behind creating a flight plan from within World Map. Loading the flight plan in World Map ensures that I've got all of the settings I need for this aircraft and that it is in the state that I've asked for. See our other videos on how you can then take this flight plan and save your aircraft in multiple different states or multiple different places. Generally speaking, the safest bet to make sure that your fuel tanks don't end up empty or your engine's not started or something's not running when you start in flight, the quote-unquote right way to start a new flight plan from scratch is to start in World Map, select some airports, select the aircraft most importantly that you want. If you haven't done it before with another flight plan, because again, when we do our second one, I'll just make a copy of this one and I'll show you how we do that. One more thing is if you really want to have control over every switch and dial setting, you're going to want to save your flight plan from within the cockpit, not from within World Map. What we're going to do is save flight plan. Now, again, I didn't really make any changes to the aircraft settings. We'll save it in our temp directory. Just to recap, create a flight plan in World Map. Anything in parking is going to be cold and dark. Anything on a runway is going to be running and ready to take off. So now that I have a flight plan from World Map, I can go ahead and go into my happy little temp directory here. And we've got our flight plan, and let's go ahead and just use the whole doggone screen here. And it's included time, cruise, descent, and approach, and maybe later we'll use those when we do the commercial flight, but I certainly don't need them right now, so I'll just delete those. And then I'm going to give it a name right now because I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the San Francisco Circuit, KSFO, and we'll call it, I don't know, we haven't really figured out our route. This is going to be our urban route, so I don't really have a name for it yet, but we'll just save this as is. And so I've got a flight plan with my Goldfinger loaded from, I actually went to SeaTac. I don't know, didn't even remember doing that. But we're not going to use it. And in fact, we're really not even going to use San Francisco International because this is a race circuit. I'm going to want to start in flight. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go ahead and set up our course. Let's kind of get an idea of the mileage first. A couple of obstacles I know I'm going to want to hit is let's fly under the Bay Bridge. I'm not going to worry about exactly where I place my points. I'll just put them in the center of the span for right now. I'm going to want to go around Alcatraz, and I'm going to want to force you under the Golden Gate, and we're going to be humming this way, so we're going to want to, I think I want to make my way back to the Sutro Tower, because that's basically the highest point in San Francisco. I think it's up here somewhere. So we're going to go under the bridge. We ought to put a waypoint out here somewhere. And then let's find the Sutro Tower, because that'll be in Mount Sutro, so that should be an easy place to spot. Hey, where's our tower? So there's our Sutro Tower. Now I don't think, I'm not going to try and get too cute. You know, it looks big in the photogrammetry, but I don't think you're going to fit an aircraft through there. I mean, in theory you can, because you can see the buildings down here. Maybe we'll try it. I don't know if the game will let us do that, but we'll put a point at the Sutro Tower because, again, it should be easy to spot. We're not really going to San Francisco International. You know, we could just keep our circuit right here and it'll be nice and short. Oh, it's not giving me a good mileage because I've still got SeaTac on here, so let me delete that. Yeah, I mean, that's a 19-mile. Half of it is right here. But if I just swoop back around the bridge, that looks like that'll be kind of a fun little circuit. So let's see if we can find a couple more quick waypoints. Chase Center is probably easy to spot. I'll bet you we can see that. And of course, stadiums are always a good bet because Flight Simulator does love a stadium. So you'll almost always see the stadiums. Before I drop my pin, let me make sure I'm at my last waypoint. Actually, since I deleted SeaTac off my flight plan, it's always a good idea to save right away because it sets your departure and arrival iCal on save. So if you're fooling around changing your first and last waypoints, even though it kind of doesn't matter for a race circuit because these may or may not be legitimate iCal codes, I'm going to start this one in flight, so they ultimately won't be. It's just a good idea to save after changing your first or last waypoints. And we said we were going to use the Chase Center. Now, when I try and drop a point after my last point, it doesn't really know what I'm trying to do. So, because again, Flight Plan is really expecting you to pick a starting and ending airport and then build your trip between that. So just make sure you select a waypoint, any waypoint, as you're creating new points. And usually what you want to do is like make this one my finish. Or we'll call this one Done Racing, and kind of drag it out. So let's say our start finish line, well, the Sutro Tower itself can be our start finish. So let's move our start out this way, or this was our finish point. So we'll be coming in from the ocean basically. So if we fly past the Sutro Tower, we're going to end up way out here somewhere, which now means I need to, here, we'll just leave the Chase Center where it is. We'll go back to point 3. And if I drop my pin, it will automatically be after the previously selected point. All right, so we got to rearrange these. What I got here? Oh, that's my Done Racing. That's going to go after the Sutro Tower. So move the Sutro Tower down, and then we're going to need a start point. We've actually got KSFO. Let's just move that. Actually, it's an airport, so I'm going to delete it. So I'll just put a new point after that, which is my first waypoint. And now I don't need this one. What have I done here? Oh, Chase Center is actually our first waypoint, not our last. So let's move that one up where it belongs. And we just need a start point. So we've decided we're going to start and finish at the Sutro Tower. And now is probably a good time to turn on our radius is and start looking at these points in detail. So I've got a 14-mile circuit. Let's take a quick look at it. 14-mile circuit that I'm probably going to trim in because I'm probably going to stay closer to the shore, although I may add some more points. Let's start at the Sutro Tower. Oh, we're going to turn our radiuses on. See our other videos for how these options work. And in this case, I'm going to want to zoom in pretty close because I'm just basically going to walk through all of my waypoints and adjust where they are. Let's find our Sutro Tower. Here it is. I'm off base a little bit. Okay, and this can be helpful if you're flying through skyscrapers, but when I'm adjusting my waypoints, I usually turn the tilt off so you're looking straight down. But you can turn the tilt on and then you can get 360-degree view of whatever you're trying to look at. We want flat view in this case, and we said this is this my start point here? Oh, that's my finish. So we need to add a start point. So again, I'm going to select my beginning point because that way when I drop it, it'll already put it in the right spot in the flight plan. And now what I'm going to want to do is adjust my points so that basically the Sutro Tower ends up where the two radiuses meet. That's probably maybe even too far apart. Something like that. Let's see where the tower actually is. Here it is. It's way down here. That's why I can't find it. You know, they used to make the push pin for the Sutro Tower a lot more obvious. So my start point, I'm going to want probably right at the tower. And then my finish point, I'm going to be going bombing through this way. And if I'm going to do laps, I'm going to want to round the tower and start my next lap. So we'll put the finish point right. Oh, I can see it now. I thought it used to be like one of these historical, like this one, like the Florence Nightingale statue. I guess it lost its historic status. Now when you zoom in, you can see my Sutro Tower is basically right here. It's like a Venn diagram. It's where my start and finish points overlap. So basically I will have zero gap in time, almost certainly in the Goldfinger at the speeds I'll be traveling. It's going to trigger both of these waypoints effectively at the same time. You just want to make sure you trigger the finish one first. The start won't trigger till the finish anyway, so that's probably fine either way, even if you overlap them. But I like to have my finish leading into my waypoint and my start leading out of the waypoint. As my aircraft passes into whatever the radius is, again, just to recap on the modes, if I'm normal mode, it's based on speed rounded up to the nearest 100 feet per second, and that's your radius of the waypoint. Pro mode is no rounding, and that's your diameter. That's the full diameter of the waypoint. Bush trip, it uses 3,000 feet as the outer limit to pick you up, but the bush trip mode is really uses the avionics in the cockpit. Just uses what Microsoft Flight Simulator is transmitting as your previous and next waypoints. And then fixed is just what it sounds like. You can set the number of feet you want your waypoint to be. Okay, so we're just going to use normal for this video. Okay, so now we've put our start and finish points around the Sutro Tower, which again should be super easy to spot. We're flying the Goldfinger and I'm in normal mode. If I'm in pro mode, it's about half that. So you'll see either way, even in pro mode, you might have a couple of milliseconds in between. But if you have a multi-lap race, the race is considered started on the start point waypoint of the first lap and doesn't finish till the last point of the last lap. Even if I moved this one and wanted to finish at the Nike point and start here, well, if I put my points here, when my lap ends, there might be, and there probably will be, a small gap in time between the time end waypoint triggers and my start waypoint triggers for my next lap. If I don't want that, if you'll just kind of put your waypoints equidistant on either side of your actual start finish line, you won't have any gaps in time between your laps. All right, so that's tips and tricks number one. So let's start giving these names. This one's irrelevant, so we'll just call this guy Ready. And we're going to say it's our get ready point. And now this is where we're going to want to spawn. So I probably want to set something more than 10 feet here. Let's say I want to spawn at 1,000, and that'll give me an opportunity to dive a little bit and pick up some speed probably, because basically San Francisco is pretty much at sea level. And then we'll go to our first waypoint, and I'm going to change the name to start. And this is the Sutro Tower. And now I'm actually going to need to know what my elevations are, and it's actually not much. So even though the Sutro Tower is the highest point, it's kind of hard to see a number when it's in the city like this with all the street names. There's one. Oh, and now we're zoomed in too close. But I think that says 300 feet? 800 feet. The Sutro Tower is at about 1,000 feet. Yeah, we'll say that's at 1,000 feet. So we'll make our start point for now 1,200. Now usually I'll fly these first before I upload them to make sure they're not entirely impossible, and that's what we're going to do anyway. And we're going to have turn 1 at the chase center. We'll set this chase center, and it's essentially at sea level, so we'll make this one 300 feet. And now we're going to want to maybe look at the satellite, because you're going to be flying. Do we want to fly over the center? There's a couple large buildings here. Do we want to split the buildings? I don't know if those are more than 300 feet. We can tilt our map and take a look. Let's turn off our radius real quick. There are 1, 2, 3. It's only 10 stories, so that's only, 120 feet. At 300 feet, we won't have to split these buildings, but we'll go ahead and put our waypoint right in the center of the chase center. But you're probably going to want to zoom in. I dropped it at the center on satellite imagery, and you can see it's offset, because the satellite imagery, typically, you can imagine it as if you're sitting in space at the equator. So everything's going to be slightly tilted when you're looking in the northern hemisphere, slightly tilted to the north, and in the southern hemisphere everything's slightly tilted to the south. But by switching to map mode, it gives me the footprint of the building itself. And the other thing I noticed is if you turn off terrain, you can't really tell here very well. Maybe I'll find another landmark, but it actually gives you some of the internal contours of the building. So like, for example, if you look at the Eiffel Tower and you turn off terrain, it actually gives you the pads. It shows you the pads where the feet are, for example. But for our case, we just need this big oval, and we're going to put our waypoint right in the middle of the oval on Phil's Coffee there. Don't trust your satellite imagery. When I look at the satellite, that doesn't look centered, but when I look at my map, it is from directly above the building. And then our next waypoint is the Oakland Bay Bridge. So we're going to have to do a little homework here. I want to go under the Bay Bridge. So I'm going to open a browser here. And let's say, how high is the deck of the Bay Bridge? It says at the west end of the span, which is where we want to be, it's 526 feet. So that's plenty. We'll leave it at 300. I guess we can put it at 500. We'll make this one a reasonably not difficult, I guess. So as long as you're under the road deck, you're fine. And this is going to be we'll just call it the Bay Bridge to keep it short. And this is turn 2. And then we're going to move it closer to shore, and we're going to want to zoom in and take a look at the satellite, because I would need to know where the nearest stanchion, I don't know what they actually call them, but the nearest suspension tower is. We want to turn our radius back on. Oh, that's cute. I never noticed it tilts your radius too. But let's leave the tilt off right now. So I probably want to be a little closer. This way, if I decide to switch it to Pro mode, probably really going to want to skim the tower as I'm coming through. And I don't want to have a gap between the tower and where my radius starts in Pro mode. So this gives me a lot of extra room here that I'll never use in normal mode. Also kind of cuts down how sloppy you can be in normal mode, because if I set this up assuming normal mode and I just wanted to use the very edge of my 500-foot radius as as, I should probably just zoom in, as my border, I guess. It gives you a lot more slop out here, so if you come swinging way out, you might still hit the waypoint. So by moving it in, not only are you prepping this flight plan to be okay in pro mode, you're also cutting down the amount of slop you've got out here. That's the way I look at it anyway. Oh, I forgot to set my name. Here, this was going to be turn 3. Turn 4 is Alcatraz. I think there's a tower. Yeah, there's a water tower. So you just want something you could spot from a distance and line up with. The blockhouse is visible. All this stuff's really visible. But I think the water tower will give us a good discrete point to hit. Plus, we're probably going to want to swing out around the island then anyway. Don't need to go out over the middle of the Golden Gate, so let's figure out where the towers are and pull our waypoint in, maybe somewhere there. I probably want to be in a little bit closer because there's a little gap, so if I just skim the tower, I want to be able to hit my waypoint no matter what mode I'm in. I guess this is a good point. I could point out fixed mode. Fixed points are there if you really want to try and force some acrobatic flying. So say you want to try and force the pilot through the Golden Gate Bridge. Now we've got some measuring tools coming on maps, so you'd be able to actually measure the width of the bridge, and we could probably go look it up, but it's got what is that, 1, 2, 3, is it 3 lanes each direction? So you figure it's 60 feet plus the side, so you got about 80 feet. Well, you've probably got 60 feet is probably reasonable to get through the top of there. And you'd have to look up the altitude, but let's say I wanted to make somebody fly through, even at the road deck. Boy, that would be tricky. You've got hills at that end. If I wanted to fly through one of these, I could set my distance mode. Now this would set all my waypoints, but I could set my distance mode at like 60 feet. And now your waypoint will only be as wide as we've estimated. Most bridges and other public structures, you can actually go online and find the true dimensions of the entire structure, especially something famous like the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm almost certain you'd be able to find the architectural plan somewhere. But we know it's about, based on lane widths, you could figure those lanes are about 10 feet. All right, so I'm going to stick with normal though, but I wanted to talk about that. We're just going to fly under the Golden Gate Bridge, and I want to look straight down, or as straight down as possible, and that's probably good. There's extra, in theory, if you're in normal mode, you might be able to squeeze through here and still hit the waypoint. Okay, and then we just need to find something we can spot over here. We just want to round that point, and then we should be able to spot the Sutro Tower pretty easily because it's visible from basically all of San Francisco. Let's see this looks like low, the fountain you can probably spot because it's circular. Here's a dome that might be visible. Well, let's go with the Legion of Honor. Let's move our, oh, did I not? I didn't rename my last couple waypoints. Let's do that. So this was T4, Alcatraz. We said our previous was 500 feet. We'll just stick with 500 feet. Not trying to get too crazy on this flight plan. And then can't imagine the Golden Gate Bridge is lower than the Bay Bridge. So, and again, we're going to give you some slop by making it 500. Obviously that won't get you over the road deck because it's a suspension bridge anyway, but that should give you plenty of room to get under the bridge. But also, like we talked about on the Bay Bridge, we didn't want to set it too low because that doesn't seem fair. If if I set my waypoint too low, theoretically you could fly under the bridge but still be over the waypoint. 500 feet probably puts us up into the girder somewhere. So that's really what I'm focused on. And then the next one, we said we were going to move to the dome of Legion of Honor. This might be one where we can use our terrain setting. Zoom in. Yeah. See, it actually shows the individual rooms inside the building. And then if you turn off terrain, here, let me get rid of this again. Quick. You can see it kind of gives you a 3D block view of the building sitting on the ground with terrain turned off, and then with terrain turned on, you get a flat view, but you'll get elevations. San Francisco is generally at sea level except for the hilly portions. We'll talk about elevations more in the next race course. But we know our dome is going to be in the middle of the circular area, so if we put our pin right there, that's probably right on the dome, regardless of what it looks like here in satellite. See, it thinks we're here, but in map mode, that's pretty darn close to the center of the circle there, I think. Make this turn 6, and we're just going to stick with 500 feet. And then, because we're going to want to gradually, I think we said 1,200 feet at the Sutro Tower, and we'll double check that in flight. So we can just go ahead and set that now. That's where we want to end up. And this is our finish point. And we'll save it. So let's zoom out, take a look at our creation here. So here's my start point. Now this is probably a good time to do this, which typically I'll move the start point to line up with my first vector to make it a little easier on myself. But when you move your first waypoint, you'll get your normal message, but it will also ask you, do you want your aircraft placed at this position? Well, I'm gonna set this flight plan to start in flight. So yeah, I do. What that does for me is it saves me from having to go into my flight settings and set my latitude and longitude and altitude. It already set it for me to the exact lat and longitude of the get ready point and the altitude of 1,000 feet. So the only thing I need to do is set my azimuth to, so this is 90 degrees, so that's going to be about 80. That'll be close enough for our purposes. Now you can see it's got -80. That's not the same thing. That's -80 from 0. So that would actually put you at 280. So we want 80. I don't know why World Map likes to use relative. I think it uses relative on the left-hand side of the compass and positive numbers on the right-hand side, but you can use either. And in our case, we don't want to start on the ground, and we're not going to be on the runway. We're going to be in flight cruise. And I'm also picky. We'll give it a good description. Sutro. Oh, but the one thing I did want to do is set my date time. It picks the current date and time, but I like to use summer, somewhere around the middle of the year. And then I like to set it somewhere around high noon for race courses. That way the sun is directly overhead, so your shadows are minimized. All right, and then this one's set up for the Goldfinger. I'm going to fly it in the Goldfinger in the interest of time, but if I was really creating a race course, I would probably pick like the X-Cub or something, or the DA40, and just fly it at a leisurely pace and see if maybe there's some better waypoints to hit, or whether I want to adjust the course to make it easier or harder, whatever. But those are your flight settings, and then I think we're done. Oh wait, I didn't set my finish point number. Okay, so we've renamed our waypoints. For ready, which is a non-timed waypoint, that's where we're going to spawn. Start is where the timer's going to start. We have waypoints, which I misnumbered, idiot. We have waypoints that we're going to hit, and now I'm going to renumber as we go because I'm a moron. Now we've got our numbered waypoints by turns. You can pick anything you want. If you're going to use an aircraft with a Garmin cockpit, you may want to name these all user 01 through user 0 whatever, because any of the Garmin cockpits will rename your waypoints from your flight plan. I don't know why, but they do. Again, I would normally fly this in something else. You know, maybe I would check out the Coit Tower, see if I want to swing out this way, or swing over Treasure Island before Alcatraz, yada yada. Or maybe out, see if this is actually a lighthouse. But we'll go ahead and fly this one because it's a pretty quick 14-mile circuit. So we'll take a quick lap of this one and then make sure it's good to go. And then we'll create a backcountry race course in the mountains somewhere probably. Let's go ahead and fly it. And I guess I'll point this out. Again, you just load the flight plan from World Map, and you can see World Map picked up our circuit. It doesn't have names for any of our waypoints because they're not actual waypoints in reality. So we've spawned in flight in our Goldfinger over the neighborhood we wanted to spawn over. Now I can turn my GPS follow on, and it turns on our racing button. This would be the point at which I would create a new race course and upload my current flight plan, but I don't want to do that just yet. No, I don't. Well, yeah, actually I do want to turn on my lap timer. I could have said yes to that. Flight plan was trying to make my life easier, and I refused to accept the help. And I'll probably zoom in a little closer. for a race circuit, but you'll notice I'm not going live and I haven't created a race for it. So typically what I'll do is run through it real quick, make sure I like it, make sure it's fun, and make sure it's not impossible before I load it up to the website. So there's our Sutro Tower, not hard to spot at all. And it certainly looks like if you wanted to, you could fly through it. You might have to do it sideways, but so you'll notice our timer starts, and we're going to want to dive pretty drastically because we need to be skimming the top of the chase center by the time we get there. Where is it? Oh, I went off course. That's probably okay because I actually probably want to be banking this direction anyhow. Where the heck is the chase center? Oh, looks like Microsoft Flight Simulator imagery doesn't have a chase center yet. Typically, you're safe with stadiums, but that one is too new. So that's why you want to fly it first, because we're going to want to reset that waypoint to something. But we'll carry on, see if there's some others we want to move around. Oh, you know what? We can use Candlestick Park. I think that's what that is. Whoa! Too much altitude. And then we need to get under the Bay Bridge and head for Alcatraz. There's the Coit Tower I was talking about. We're going to want to swing out around this side of Alcatraz. I can sort of see the water tower. We might have a problem with some trees. There's my tower. That's not so bad. And then we're going to head straight for I guess that's the south tower of the Golden Gate. You could actually, if you wanted to get crazy, probably go under that arch there at the shore. Again, we said we weren't going to make this one too crazy hard. Our little dome is probably not going to be the easiest thing to spot on this first go around. Oh wait, I think I maybe see it. Oh no, I missed it by a bunch. Again, this is why I usually fly these in an X-Cub or something first. I mean, basically that outcropping isn't hard to spot. We just need to pick a point that's hittable. Oh, there's our dome. I guess we could leave that one. And now we're just looking for the Sutro Tower. And notice what happened when I passed the tower. Because my waypoints overlap, it started my next lap and finished my first lap. Now I'm going to go ahead and escape, and I'm going to stop my timer because I don't really care about that lap. And we can take a look at our lap times, and we can see I missed the first waypoint and I missed the fifth waypoint, so I never did actually get over the top of the dome there. And we said we wanted to move Chase Tower because there's really nothing to spot. We were going to move that to what I thought was Candlestick Park. Oh, maybe that's Oracle Park. Okay. Sorry, Chase. Oracle gets the love today. And just like we did before, we probably want to zoom in and make sure we've put our pin somewhere spottable. I'm going to put it right here on the right field wall. That way you could basically bomb through and you'll be able to look into the stands and the infield as you go through. Now usually I would go through, fly this again. You know, this is going to be a tricky one, but probably once you get used to it, it's not so bad. Again, if you fly it in an X-Cub, you can check out the sites. Like it might be fun to fly over Lombard or the Coit Tower, but I'm just going to leave this as is. Now that I've changed my first waypoint to Oracle Park, let's assume I go ahead and fly it and it's reasonable. I think it'll be reasonable. So now when I go back into cockpit mode, I'm gonna hit my checkered flag. I'm gonna create a new race. I'm gonna upload my current flight plan. It's picking the class aircraft I'm in, so don't forget to change out of your X-Cub if you did fly it in the X-Cub, unless that's what you want. Load an unlimited class aircraft or a T6 or whatever it is you want to do. It's gonna make the title the same as the race course. I would strongly recommend not doing that because you don't want to end up with a dozen races all with the same name. So we'll call this one San Francisco Easy Circuit. So now if somebody wants to go through and make that one a lot harder, you can call it the Pro Circuit or whatever you want. we'll say that's 5 laps because that's a fairly short course. I mean, my lap took me 4 minutes, and that's with circling back a couple of times. It's probably really no more than a 2-minute lap in an unlimited. A 5-lap race will give me about a 10-minute race. And then if I was going to use the X Cub, I would probably make it 2 or something. So give some thought to what class you're flying. You don't want to make this a 20-lap race in the X Cub because it'll take you all day long. The other thing you can do is you can actually create your own race class. Let's say I did want to restrict this to X Cubs. I could put a max airspeed of, let's say, 130 knots or call it 150, and there wouldn't be any airspeed floor, and I can give it a details like something like that. If you have like a club where, you know, y'all fly X Cubs, you could set up your routes and restrict your class to only X Cubs. An aircraft can be in multiple class. The X Cub is already in, I think, the light propeller class. Small single-engine aircraft such as a Cessna Skyhawk and X Cub. There may be some aircraft that are in multiple classes. I don't know. Like the sport class is probably a good example. You might find the DA-62 is in the performance propeller class, but you might also find it in the sport class. So there's some crossover between classes. So if you want to set up a specialized class, again, just for your, you know, you and your X-Cub club fans, or whatever you want to call it, and then when you click OK, it'll swap your class and it will create your new class. Now notice what happened. As I'm selecting classes here, it's actually going to put my P-51D Goldfinger into the sport class. If I click OK, I don't actually want to do that. I want to stick with my unlimited class. Now these classes are moderated on the website, so if you think you're being cute by joining a P-51D into the light propeller class, you're not. So if you join your X Cub into the unlimited class, or you join your P-51D into the light propeller class, mods are going to delete it at some point. So your race results might show up for a day or two, but don't get attached to them because they're going to get deleted. Actually, the laps don't get deleted. You'll still see your laps, but the mods will delete your plane out of the class if it doesn't really fit the class. When you join a race, it's going to ask you if you want to join the class. If you're not already in the class, you can still race, but don't do it unless you're legitimately in that class of aircraft. So if I go on the marketplace and buy a MiG-29, it's probably not going to be in a class yet, so I'll want to join a jet race and join the class. But if I want to fly my MiG-29 in, you know, our little San Francisco circuit here that's already set up for the unlimited class, I can do that, but I don't need to join my MiG-29 into the unlimited class because it doesn't belong. So that's all we're going to talk about, classes. I don't want to create a new one in this case. In our case, we're just going to upload our flight plan. I'm in the unlimited class. All the clicking around I did, I lost my name. So it's the San Francisco Easy Circuit. Now, it's going to ask me to share my flight plan. I should have taken a screenshot. I could have used my Radeon software to do that. There's a number of ways to take screenshots. I think I've put in the in videos before, but you can take a screenshot in flight. You know, that's a good place to use active pause or use your drone. Of course, it's going to screw your lap time, but if you recall, I flew my first lap offline, so I mean, nobody's going to see that lap. So let me just put a better description. Now, if I had done some, well, I did some laps, but I actually reset mine along the way. But I do want to create my race. I can include my local lap times if I wanted to. You'll notice mine's grayed out. That's because I've cleared my lap times. I think I saved and reopened. But those lap times are session times if you're running them locally. So as soon as you switch flight plans or you close and reopen, you're going to lose those local lap times. So we're including our additional text. I do want to include my list of waypoints. I am going to post it under my own name. You know, you can post anonymously, but it makes it a lot easier to find your own flight plans if it's under your name. And then I'm going to share it. And now I'm live. It's waiting for me to loop back around to the Sutro Tower and start my next lap, and I'll get a live lap. Now, I'm actually not going to do that. We're going to move on to the next race circuit, but this circuit's now available. Jump on and race it yourself. I guess one thing I do want to point out about the racing page is if you're on Sim Flight Plan Racing, you're not going to find the San Francisco Easy Circuit out here yet because no one has successfully completed this circuit. If you're in flight plan and you want to join a race, my San Francisco Easy Circuit is available, so you can run it, but it won't show up on the main racing page until someone completes it all 5 laps successfully. So you can join it and fly it right now by the time you see this video. In our case, we're going to move on. Let me go back to the main menu because we're going to go ahead and create a backcountry circuit real quick. It's essentially the same concepts that we just talked about on the urban circuit. So to make things easier, what I'm going to do is just use this exact same flight plan. And let's go ahead and race around Denali. If I can remember where it is. There it is. Let's see what the satellite imagery is like. It looks pretty clear, at least on Google. So this might be a good one. We'll call it like a glacier blast or something like that. And we'll go ahead and use our Goldfinger again. So let's drop a pin. I guess let's do, see, this is the peak. That's gonna be like 20,000 feet too. Let's start, should we start and finish at the peak? Oh, here looks like a really good place. Okay, this will be my start because if we look here at our terrain, it should be pretty easy to spot this bowl here between Mount Crossan and Mount Francis. So that, and you'll notice it's right at, is that 7,000 feet? So yeah, this is a gradual, it's probably a glacier, the very top of a glacier here. So we're gonna need to climb to 76. Where are we going to make ourselves go around? Well, you're going to have to be at 9,500 to get anywhere. Let's put our first waypoint right up here at Mount Caps. So there's our start and finish right here. And then we're going to, let's see, we'll go north first and then we'll come in from the south. So this will be our actual finish waypoint. The other one will be our start. And then now I can just delete everything else off the flight plan. All right, and again, important safety tip, you probably want to go ahead and save once you've done that because you'll notice our departure and arrival iCals are all screwed up because it doesn't know what to do until we save at least once. So we're going to save this back in my handy dandy temp directory. Let's go ahead and build this one out. Zoom out a bit. So this is actually going to be my start waypoint. So just like we talked about before, this is a good time to set my altitudes, and I'm going to want to be a bit higher than where my start point is going to be because I want to be able to pick up some speed. So let's say this is our ready point, and we need you to be at, let's make it 8,500. So we can really dive in and pick up some speed because we're going to immediately have to go right back uphill too. So this is our get ready point. And then this is our done point. And it really doesn't matter what the altitude is there because at that point the timer is stopped. It just gives you a place to be able to fly towards and back out of Flight Simulator. And again, it's a good idea to save when you're making modifications to your start and end waypoints. So let's take our ready point and drag it out here somewhere. It always prompts you to move your position to make sure you're not accidentally clicking the map. But this is the important question. Do I want to change my start position? Yes, I do, because that's going to go ahead and set my altitude and my latitude and longitude. And now all I have to do is figure out what my angle is. And again, we have some tools coming on the map that'll help you with that. So that's probably 30-ish. And most importantly, we're going to turn off the sims on the ground and we're going to start in flight cruise. Oh, let's move our finish out of the way too. I mean, it doesn't really matter where that point ends up because, you know, typically I'm going to escape as soon as I cross the finish line. So let's put our start point at exactly 7,000 feet, which was this contour line right here. Let's put our turn one. Actually, we don't even need to give them names because we might end up moving them around anyway. And let's turn our radius back on. So you can see this is going to be a little tough to spot right off the bat. You're going to have to be out here in the middle of nowhere with nothing but snow. So the chances of hitting this waypoint are slim and none. I mean, you can watch your flight plan map and try and put your plane right over the top of it. But again, you're not going to have anything but snow to work with to find it. So let's use this peak right here as our actual point because that'll give us a landmark that we can fly close to. Maybe move it in a little closer to the cliff face. And then 7,600, the very top of this one's at 78. Now we're going to be moving up pretty aggressively at this point anyway. So you may not want to get crazy at trying to push your altitudes down, because you're going to want to be trying to climb pretty drastically. So let's call this one 8,000. So we're going to start at 8,500. We're going to dive to 8,000 to pick up some speed, which will start our clock. This one should really be start. And Denali's pretty big. I'm going to zoom out a bit to get our general course. Okay, so let's say we're going to go past Catalina Dome, over this saddle. Well, hey, let's make this really exciting. So we're going to hit this saddle. Let's come around up over this saddle at basically the foot of Denali. Then down this glacier to Mount Coven. Then let's swing around Pegasus Peak. So let's make you go down here somewhere. Then back up to East Buttress. And then we can fly around. Let's see. Let's go down this way. So let's actually, instead of East Buttress, let's make you fly down here. So you'll have to crest this ridge and then dive, and then we'll force you down in what I assume is a glacier over this little ridge, and then around Mount Francis. Or we're going to let you go over Mount Francis. We'll see. But we'll just drop our finish point right here, and then we'll figure out whether we want to go around or over. This would also be a good place possibly to do a one-way flight if you wanted to start way down here somewhere, you know, at a glacier lake or something. Fly all the way up the glaciers, over Denali, down the glaciers, you know, down there might even be an airfield down here somewhere. And you'd end up with like a 100-mile flight that might be good for jets or something like that. Or, you know, similar to like Grand Canyon is about 200 miles. If you want to do a long run, one direction, you could do that too. But this one, we can run this as a circuit. Google gives you the terrains and the satellite imagery, but that doesn't necessarily mean how it's going to look in Flight Simulator. It just depends on how full the satellite imagery is for that area. I will adjust these waypoints around to something usable, and I will upload this. And when I do that, again, all I need to do is hit my checkered flag here, make sure I have my correct race class selected, create a new race, upload my current flight plan, and give it a legitimate name. For our last flight plan, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm not going to fly it. It's just a commercial flight plan. So let's say that I live in Houston, so United is our local airline. So let's say United flight status. So I want to just pick an aircraft and I'll just do a day in the life of that aircraft. Okay, so obviously commercial flight crews swap out and it's not necessarily one piloting crew, but let's start at LAX. Because I want to find the last leg of the day. So let's say that our last leg is from Los Angeles to San Francisco, and just pick a date, doesn't matter. And the reason I just picked that is because it was, I'm fairly certain they're going to have a zillion flights a day between those, and they do. So let's pick something late in the day, 9 p.m. All right, so we've got our flight number. That's a 737. Let's see if we can find something with an A320. I don't have a 737. The A320neo is standard, so let's use that one. Here's a very last flight of the day, and it is an Airbus. Okay, let's not use this circuit. Let's go back into Flight Simulator. Because this is a commercial flight, I probably don't want to copy a racing flight plan that's set up for the P-31D, because it's going to be missing all sorts of settings for the A320neo. So it might work, it might not, but I'm not going to chance it. I'm just going to go ahead and select my A320neo. I actually do want to start cold and dark. So let's say I want to start off, where did we say? We were going to end up in San Francisco. So ultimately we'll want to start at San Francisco. And then this one, actually this flight leg started at LAX. And we're going to arrive at KSFO. If you want to, you could pick a runway and it'll start you on the runway started. But let's say I want to play commercial pilot. All right, and I would point out that airlines pay 2 well-trained grown-ass people to fly these aircraft. If you want to do somebody's job for 8 hours, you go right on ahead. Ramp 156 parking is where we're going to start. That should be fine. That's a medium gate. It should be fine for an A320. And then we'll select our arrival, KSFO. I don't actually care on the arrival runway. I'll just let it pick what it wants. And then as I pointed out earlier, if I want to start with my switches, gauges, and levers in certain positions, I'm actually going to want to load this flight plan from here, get into the cockpit, set all my switches, and then save it. But I don't actually care. I'm going to start cold and dark, so it doesn't really matter. I can just save this flight plan right now, and then just open it up in flight plan. And now we've got, here, let me turn off GPS follow again. So now we're from KLAX. It's got our climb, cruise, descent, and approach, which since we're flying an A320, I might want to keep, but I'm not going to for my purposes. I just want to show you something that we talked about at a meeting that might be fun to do and actually haven't even tried yet. So we're going to end it at San Francisco, and we found, let's go back to what's going to be our flight plan. We're going to arrive at San Francisco at 11:59. So let's just say this was UAL 1597. Let's see. So that's where that aircraft ended. Let's see where that aircraft's coming from. And it was coming from Phoenix. Let's go back and drop a pin in Phoenix. Actually don't know where the airport is. There it is. I'm not going to worry about runways or anything right now. So what was that? At PHX. Now you can make it an airport. I'll go ahead and make it an airport for grins, but one thing to keep in mind, airports are not timed waypoints. So I can have them in the middle of my flight plan, I can land, I can visit them, but it won't affect the timer at all. The timer will just keep timing from whatever the previous waypoint was and not trigger again until the next waypoint. I'm going to show you how to actually put waypoints on the runways so that basically the timer will stop when you land at KSFO, not when you reach parking or wherever that waypoint actually is. But you could do it either way. And so this is arriving at, when did we arrive at Phoenix? At 8 p.m. Phoenix. And what did I think I put the flight number in the other one. And that's UAL 1892. And because we're going backwards, this is where I ended my day. I'm going to need to move my waypoints up as I go. It inserts your waypoint after whatever your selected waypoint is. So even if I've got this first waypoint selected, it's going to insert after, and I just need to move it to the top. And then we can also update our LAX flight, which I didn't pay attention to. So that's our departure. We need our arrival at LAX. So we do want the previous. So we arrived at LAX at 9:30 p.m. Oh, so that was the previous night flight. Or no, actually, because this one's way late. Boy, this is going to be a long day, y'all. KLAX, we arrived at 21:30 to Los Angeles. And it was UAL 1892. And then where did we come from before Phoenix? Back from San Francisco. So we go back to our map, drop another pin in KSFO. What I might do is go ahead and give a suffix. I don't think I'll use a number. That way I can differentiate between my push pins when I start moving my push pins around. That's really the only reason for doing it. You can have multiple push pins all named KSFO, because like I could have a flight that starts and ends in San Francisco with the proper ICAO code at both ends. Since San Francisco's a hub, I'm probably going to hit San Francisco 2 or 3 times over the course of a day. I might want to go ahead and add a suffix to it. You could actually find all these flights in World Map as well. I don't know how you would do a multi-leg flight like this in World Map though. So we're Denver to Medford. Where are we coming from? Norfolk, Virginia. Holy cow. So this aircraft started in Virginia. I'll bet you that's where it started in the morning. Wow, no, it started at Newark at 6 a.m., then to Norfolk, then from Norfolk to Denver. and then the rest of all these legs. So this plane's been going for days and days and days. So I'm going to stop here. I mean, obviously we're at a 2,300 mile flight plan with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 landings. So if you're going to fly this, you're going to be at it all day, which this plane actually was. We can probably actually look up. Yeah, it's 4661. So my flight plan title is... We're starting in Denver. I didn't look at the departure time out of Denver, so that's really the time you would want to use. If you're starting here, we'll just say, we don't care when we arrive, we'll just say start at Denver, and you can figure out what the departure is supposed to be for UAL 1323. If you really wanted to set your start date and time, you could set your start date and time. It's got us starting at Denver, but this is still the parking from KSFO, so that's not going to be legit. I probably want to go ahead and set myself at a legitimate parking spot in Denver, like say, here's a little United, probably A320. So A35 looks like a good spot. Okay, and are you sure you want to move it? Yes, I am. And do you want your aircraft there? Yes, I do. Now I can set my parking. The way Flight Simulator usually does this is like this. You might have to park your aircraft at the particular airport you're interested in to see what the naming conventions are for gates. We're going to allow weather to be live. I can set my tail numbers. If I wanted to match up my tail number, I could say it was, and I've forgotten what it is. I don't actually care. We're actually not going to start flight runway. We're going to start at pre-flight gate, cold and dark. We are on the ground, and that's all of the ATC type settings. And let's switch back to map and let's zoom way out. Obviously not going to fly for 8 or 10 hours, however long this would actually take. I mean, based on United's schedule, if everything starts and finishes on time, I think this flight left Denver at what, 11 in the morning, something like that. So you'd be flying a full 12 hour. Now this is a legit flight plan. If you want to go ahead and fly this, you can load this up and jump in your A320 cold and dark in Denver and fly these airports, and you don't have to do anything else special. But let's say you wanted to track your times as you fly them from airport to airport. Well, this is an airport push pin. As you can see, it's in gray. The airports always show up in gray because you can't change the iCal and you can't change the altitude of an airport. You could, of course, delete and create a new one. The first thing I probably want to do is start my timer when I push back. So I'll just drop a pin out here somewhere after my start point, and I probably don't want it all the way at the other terminal. Let's put it kind of in the middle of the taxiway there, so that as soon as I push back, whether I get a pushback from a tug or whatever, as soon as my aircraft is detected moving across that point, it'll start my timer. Or you could start it at the runway. Again, we can, even though we've selected parking, we can still select a runway number. So I think 25 was actually a runway at KSFO. We should be able to take off right here on, what is that? They need to repaint the runways. 34 left. We can check out our taxiway, but I gave us a nice easy taxi, so we'll get pushed back. Let's take a look. That may be actually too far. I mean, I don't necessarily need to get pushed back that far. I'm gonna head out. I'm probably gonna catch this taxi marking anyway, so how about we put our waypoint right there. So the tug's gonna push me back. I'll have him push me back to the right, and then I'll just cross my waypoint as I taxi out to the runway. Just like in our how-to on taxiing, you could leave your satellite on and zoom in super close as you're taxiing and follow your aircraft taxiing. So it should be really easy to hit these waypoints. It's not like you're moving at 500 knots. So that'll start my timer. I'll take off, I'll land here. Let's say I'm going to request whatever this runway is. Oh, that's a taxiway, that's not a runway. So runway 14, so let's drop a pin. Let's say I want to stop my timer as soon as I land at Medford. Is that where I am? Yeah, I'm at Medford. So we'll say arrived, MFR, we'll call it AR. Alright, I don't know. And it's just a user point. It's not an airport. We already have the airport push pin. So this is just going to be my touchdown at Medford. And then to allow for taxiing or loading, unloading, whatever you want to do, you could use this airport point for your parking, or you can specify your parking, which Medford may not be marked. Do they even have terminals big enough? Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to guess this is where all the big boys park. Oh yeah, they're marked. Doesn't tell me what concourse though. It's probably A4. But, you know, doesn't matter. You can request parking when you land if you want. I'm just going to drop a pin somewhere in parking. Important safety tip, if you've got your markings turned on, you can't drop another point within that spot. So if you're wanting to put, you know, you could drop your pin out here and then drag it in, or you can turn your radius off and then, you know, drop your pin wherever. We're going to count when we start. Let's call this one departure of MFR. I'm just making this stuff up as I go along. You can do whatever you want to do. And we'll call this pushback Medford. And notice I haven't set any altitudes. I don't actually care. That's going to be 0 means unlimited, so it's not going to measure altitudes at all. And in this case, let me turn off, let's see my satellite and stop tilting my map. We could pick a parking spot, but honestly, you're going to end up probably requesting a parking spot from ATC. Either maybe drop your point here, or probably the thing to do... Oh, this is my pushback. I'm sorry. Probably the thing to do is... Let's see, we're taking off from here back to San Francisco. From Medford, Oregon, I'm going to want to request that same runway. What was it, 14? Yeah, so I'm going to request 14. It just depends on what you want to time. Let's say I want to time from the time I push back and start taxiing, or I could set my point here. Obviously, your timer is going to be running the whole time you're parked here, unless you back out a cockpit map. But let's put our waypoint right here on the taxiway. Sometimes if you turn off terrain, the taxiways will be displayed at airports. I guess Medford's probably too small. You're going to set separate waypoints for where you want the race timer to count you as arrived at Medford, and when you want the timer to consider you leaving Medford. So what I've said is, I want you to count me as arriving at Medford as soon as I hit the aiming points on the arrival runway. I'm going to continue timing at that waypoint, so we'll be considered at touchdown at Medford. And we could consider this actually just at Medford, because this is when you're on the ground. So we'll just start at the beginning. I'll be parked cold and dark in Denver at the parking spot I asked for. The timer's going to be off in this case while I restart the aircraft. If you wanted to, can put your start point as a non-airport, and essentially your timer will start as soon as you spawn in the aircraft. Because it doesn't always show this, but Flight Simulator drops you onto the tarmac. So you actually have a slight airspeed at the very beginning of spawning, even if your aircraft is off. So Flight Plan should pick you up and start your timer as soon as you spawn, but you might have to experiment around with that. I've got my start point as the point along my taxiway, so I'm going to make sure I hit this little bend in the runway markings when I taxi out, so it'll start my timer. Again, if you had wanted to include the time it took you to start the aircraft, you would want to have basically 2 waypoints. I'd probably put my actual airport waypoint was right there, and then I'd have a start waypoint right at my parking spot. That's not what I decided to do, so I'm not going to do that. So my timer would have started here, time all the taxi all the way out to runway 34. I'll take off, I'll fly to Medford, and the timer continues running until I hit my aiming point. I don't have a altitude set for this waypoint, so I don't necessarily have to touch my wheels down here. If you wanted your wheels to touch down there, for an A320, let's be real, folks. I mean, you could set it to a foot, but man, you're gonna have to be accurate with that big old jet. Set it 5-10 feet, something like that, and you'll make sure that your wheels are within 5 to 10 feet of the runway here at the aiming points. I'm gonna leave mine at 0, because I don't think I need to make this any more difficult than it already is. So it'll flag a sector time. At this point, you'll have your timing from the start to when your wheels touch the runway at Medford. Then I'll taxi, then I'll park, go to the bathroom, pretend that we loaded and unloaded, get a pushback if I want to get a pushback, and then my next sector will start as soon as I cross my waypoint heading out to runway 14. Again, I could have set another one here. I mean, I could still set another one here. So maybe I want to actually time my taxi from where I push back at the terminal, and I would probably move this waypoint over here somewhere until I taxi out to the hold short for 14. So I'll get another timestamp when I hit this waypoint, and then I'll take off and go to San Francisco, and I'd probably want to do the same thing. Or I could just skip all this interim nonsense if I just want to fly, and I'm not going to worry about the timer stopping and starting at each destination. I can go to my end destination, which again, I told you to rename your waypoints so that if you look here at KSFO, I've got, oh, I thought I'd have more, but this flight plan was all over the place. So I've got 2 waypoints. I can easily distinguish which one it is by hovering over, and it'll give me a name. So I gave them different names, different designators. I could say just before this waypoint, I'm going to land at 28 left after LAX. This is my finish, and the day is done. Okay, so I'm not going to flesh this one completely out. People get paid to do this. This is not something I would spend my Saturday afternoon doing, but if you like to fly the big iron, as they say, this is the way you would do it, is you could set a flight plan. And again, the way I came up with this flight plan was I just picked an actual United Airlines A320 that I found at San Francisco. But if you want to recreate this one yourself, help yourself. But keep an eye on the downloads. I'll probably create one. Maybe I'll flesh this out at some point and upload it. The recap is the race courses are really no different than any other flight plan, other than the fact that you just need to think about when you want your timer to start and stop, whether that's at airports and timing a commercial flight, which again is not something everybody is doing, I don't think. Go back to our original San Francisco circuit. The key is really just to put your waypoints somewhere that you can spot in flight, because you're trying to spot real landmarks on the ground, not just barrels and, at the Reno air races. So pick things that you can spot, pay attention to your distances, and keep it reasonable for whatever aircraft you plan on flying. You don't have to upload it immediately. You can fly the lap with your lap timer turned on. Make sure that you haven't come up with some outrageously difficult flight plan that nobody's ever going to be able to fly. But then when you're ready, you can go into the race mode, upload your new flight plan. It'll automatically bring you over to the share screen. You can type some text about it. If you've got local laps you want to include, you can include those. If you've got an image you can want to include, you can include those. And just to point out, that's the standard share, so you don't have to get into racing mode. If you want to share the flight plan ahead of time before you even start to race, you can share it up to simflightplan.com, and then it'll just be ready next time to join. It'll already be in my list of circuits available to choose. So that's how to create your own race courses. Again, the race courses will be up here. We should find our San Francisco circuit would probably be the first one, wouldn't it? Yeah. So our San Francisco circuit is now dropped here in line, but our race hasn't joined the list because no one has successfully given us a time to put on the leaderboard. That's all I have for creating racing circuits. I'm sure it was enough. We'll probably chop these down into smaller summary videos as well, so that you can refer back. If you're just interested in the section about the backcountry, we'll probably chop the backcountry into its own video later. But this is the full comprehensive how to create a race course. Thanks for watching. If you got this far, please like and subscribe.